Hello, I'm Mike Borslow, Executive Director of Massachusetts Youth Soccer Association. And this session is everything you need to know about Mass Youth Soccer members' insurance coverages and claims. Actually, if it was everything you needed to know, this would be a 2-hour session. And I think, though, you're going to find the information we share with you in this short period of time together to be informative, eye-opening, and really give a lot of us a call to action. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to start off with claims. Where is your risk? We need to know more about potential risks to be better prepared to avoid them. I know a lot of organizations have never had an insurance claim and pray they don't have one in the future. But you never know when something's going to happen. So this presentation will include a wide scope of claims paid or in progress. Now, the information collected was with the cooperation from youth insurance providers. These are all soccer related. Some happened here in Massachusetts and others happened in other states around the country. I think you may be surprised by some of the claims that we go over. The first section is on sexual molestation. I'll give you a minute to review. Rather eye-opening, isn't it? And look at the amount of the claims paid. 2.1 million. 13-year-old female abused by their coach. The open claim could be anywhere from 750,000 to 2 million. A 16-year-old molested. 1.3 million. A coach gave player alcohol and molested. On average, most sexual molestation claims across the country are settled for an average of just short of $1 million per claim. So that means they didn't go to court and there was a settlement. Sexual molestation, are also known as sexual abuse and molestation, or SAM, is one of the key reasons why insurance carriers have had their premiums skyrocket over the past few years. Here in Massachusetts, we have been extremely fortunate. I think that is in large part is due to the incredible work done by all of our member organizations on trying to mitigate these claims or events or happenings from even starting. We've got incredible coaches, administrators, managers that have their eyes open and they're aware of what's taking place. But like with anything else, we say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Well, here are some things that we can do to control the when. Lowering our risk, creating trust. We have to make it known that the national office here, the state association, the leagues and the clubs will listen to concerns and complaints. We have to be visible to parents and players, knowing that we're here to help them. We need to be able to try and spot issues before they become huge problems. By being able to listen without judging and listening to the players, we can take appropriate action. That's where becoming a mandatory reporter is a huge part of the process. Another step is educate. We need to make sure that everybody knows what is acceptable and what is not. Having our codes of conduct in place and different rules is very, very important. Because when we're talking sexual molestation, we're talking physical, could be verbal molestation, It could be emotional. There's all different forms of abuse and molestation. Monitor. No permission is needed to participate. No permission is granted to participate until U.S. Center for Safe Sport Training is taking place. Our adult participants cannot interact with children until they have taken the safe sport training. It's an annual requirement. And inform. We need to provide, the current policies. Well, we have our policies up on our website. It's you've got the Safe Sports map and the U.S. Center Soccer Safe Sport Framework, and we have the Mass Youth Soccer policies are on our website. We need to be aware of what's permissible with one-on-one interactions. We can demand compliance. We need to make sure all coaches, assistant coaches, admins know the rules and monitor that they're being followed. Once again, we've been very fortunate here in the state, and this is because we have incredibly vigilant participants in all Mass Youth Soccer activities. We don't issue pass cards or roster until all the requirements have been met. And being vigilant, we need to understand and question any blemishes on a coach's record. So once again, SAM, sexual abuse and molestation, is a huge issue, something we need to be aware of and make sure that we're monitoring at all times. Let's move on to goalposts. And I'll give you a minute to read this. Once again, you may be surprised by some of these claims that have been paid. And of course, there's one open. But of course, nobody wants to have to deal with a claim where it involves player death. It's devastating. There's no amount of money that can make that family whole again. But some of these are just recent. There was a recent case in New York City where a player was killed. So we need to make sure that we, as administrators, work with all of our coaches, our division directors, everybody involved in providing soccer to our children, that goalpost safety is one of the most important aspects of what we do. In fact, goalposts, goal netting, is the #1 area of claims for soccer in the country. What can we do to mitigate some of these things from taking place? Be aware. We all know that falling goalposts cause severe injuries and death. A lot of people never realize that a goal in a stiff wind, you can be blown over. Accidents are preventable. We need to inspect all of our goals. We need to make sure that they're in good shape, they're properly welded and connected, and they're anchored with ground anchors, anchored with spikes, anchored with sandbags. If it's a really, really windy day and you put 3 people to sit on the back of a goal, just keep it down. But that's the extreme. It should be properly anchored, sandbagged, everything. It's a coach's responsibility. It's a facility owner's responsibility, and it's a referee's responsibility to make sure goalposts and frames are safe. You need to train everybody what to do. On our website, we have great videos available on goalpost safety And one of them is from our preferred vendor of Quick Goal, has a goal post safety video on the Mass Youth Soccer website. We need to know that goals are our responsibility. Forgotten goals left on a field no longer in use are still a liability. Practice takes place, coaches gather up their stuff, and they leave the goals in the middle of the field, anchored or unanchored. They're still an attraction to some kids to go over and play on. If they have not been properly stored and secured, and an accident happens, it comes back on the coach, the organization, and Mass Youth Soccer. Yes, we know removing nets takes a lot of time, but nets are considered an attractive nuisance, especially the kids who want to climb on them. Secure the nets when not in use. Store them properly. Come up with methods for doing this safely. The field of play. Let's take a look at these. And I have another slide of 2 more after this. So let's take a minute to go through this one. And I'll go to the next slide. Once again, 4 claims that might surprise quite a bit of you and the amount that was paid out. One of these 4 was a Mass Youth Soccer claim. It is so important that we know where our children are playing, we're aware of the grounds, we're aware of potential risks, and we do everything possible to mitigate those risks. So just by putting a white circle around a hole in the ground doesn't mean a child's not going to step in it while running with a soccer ball. Fill it in with something. Have it coned off, or simply don't play on it. We need to make sure that we do everything within our ability not to be found negligent in anything that we do when it comes to the field of play and field safety. Now, the last one here has to do with bothering the neighbors. And so there was a suit and there was $500,000 paid out. So it's a good idea to make sure before you do anything at a place of play that you cover all your bases. You try to think of the unintended consequences. You really take a look at everything that you've got going on. And then also make sure that whatever you're doing, if it's out of the ordinary, that it would be covered under the policies provided to you by Mass Youth Soccer. It's always good to think ahead rather than pay the price after. Here's 2 more. So you might say to yourself, well, this isn't the field of play. Well, in a way, it has to do with soccer activities. Fundraising is considered a covered soccer activity. Unfortunately, here we had a player who was hit by a car while out trying to raise funds. And then we have a referee who fell down a flight of stairs. Well, you say, well, what did this have to do with the club? Or what did this have to do with the league? Well, if the club had permission to use the facility, they were leasing or renting it, or it was a school facility, and we provided a certificate of insurance, then yes, if a claim is to be made and we're found to be at fault or negligent, then yes, there's the potential that the claim would involve a payout from our insurance coverages. So we need to be aware. Your liability extends well beyond the field, as the last two designated: parking lots, sidewalks, areas around field complexes. If you're having an off-site event, a gala, a jamboree fundraiser, you have to be aware of what are the risks that could happen here. Well, many cities and towns and owners won't let you use their facility without being named an additional insured or the COI. So you want to make sure that you're properly covered and properly protecting the places you use fields. Lighting. Using a facility and you decide to go past dusk. Well, now you're taking a huge risk. So when it gets dark, stop play. When the lights go out, stop play. The old dot your eyes. If you're going to make changes or improvements to any leased or owned field, make sure you have all the permits needed. For example, the one with the lighting, it's very possible they didn't have permission to bring in lighting. So you want to make sure that you meet all the requirements of the field owner with the fields of play. Coaches, practices, and games. I'll give you a minute to read this. Drills were called excessive. We need to make sure that when we are conducting soccer practices, that we're using reasonable methodologies. Forcing players to exert themselves with excessive physical activity can most certainly have ramifications. Having your goalkeepers run into a goalpost so they get used to the feeling is not a practice. It's not a method. It's excessive. Having your players do planks because they misbehaved, and if they don't hold the plank, they're forced to do it again over and over and over again, is excessive. And then the last one here, we had a coach and a player collision. Mass Youth Soccer has had claims going both ways, where a coach put a claim in for being injured while playing with children, or a child was injured while playing with a coach or an older player. And we have some things we'll share with you to address the third bullet. So we can educate, making sure our coaching classes are taken. Mass Youth Soccer offers coaching courses for every level of coach. This is where our coaches learn best practices. So if they haven't started taking any courses yet, please have them take a look at starting to take the grassroots coaching courses. The 9v9, the 7v7, the 11v11, or the 4v4 for that matter. Give them the support that they need to run safe practices. If the weather is terrible, cancel practice. Have your DSC or another club member observe practices. Somebody has a complaint about a coach's methodologies, go out and observe, watch them, watch what they do. Try and spot the problems before they become bigger problems. Have regular communications with your coaches and staff. Listen and communicate. And lastly, use required Matthew Soccer registration language for player and adult registrations at the local level. In that required language, there's a section that states where a parent agrees and understands that their child may be on the field of play with players younger or older than their child, and that they accept that risk. A lot of times we could have a U14 team scrimmage a U16 team. Sometimes parents don't realize that is something that could take place. And if they don't want their child to participate, they don't have to. But it's important to make sure that they're aware of it. And that's why we put that into our registration language. And I'll touch on where you can find that in a second. So the insurance programs that Mass Youth Soccer has available are listed here. We have a comprehensive program which includes excess medical insurance, liability insurance, general and excess, separate sexual abuse and molestation, general and excess, cyber liability insurance, and manager's liability insurance, which includes directors and officers insurance. All of the information you need about the Mass Youth Soccer Insurance Program is found on our website under administration. Click on insurance, and you'll see all the information you need to know there. Scroll down for a lot of it. You'll see here the link for the outline of Mass Youth Soccer policies, and that'll take you to this document as provided by Marsh McLennan, our insurance broker, which outlines all the current policies that Mass Youth Soccer has in force. Another place that you should really be aware of to help your overall organization out is on the member toolkit. This is under the administration tab. Click on member toolkit, you scroll down, and there is a long list of items that are available for all of our member organizations to help them with governance, help them with policies and how to run their board and the such. At the bottom of this page is links to waiver language. This is where the player registration waiver language and the adult registration language that must be used by all member organizations. And this provides the protections noted about when players are playing with players of different ages. So I hope that you found this to be informative. We were not going to drill down into every single policy. That's something you can do on your own. But what we really wanted to make sure of is that Mass Youth Soccer provides one of the best insurance programs amongst any of the 54 different state associations. And by learning about the claims and why the claims took place, hopefully we are all learning what we need to do to mitigate claims in the future. What can we do to prevent claims from taking place in the future? So with that being said, we thank you. We're going to go live for Q&A. So if you have any questions about any of the slides that I shared or any other piece of information, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Let's try and not get into little specifics that happened last week in your club or your town, and we can do that offline, but definitely are willing to take any questions that you have with regards to the information that was shared with you. Thank you very much, and we'll be live in 2 seconds.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome everybody. We're going to go straight into the questions for you, Mike. We'll start off.
Let me just give me 1 quick second, Rob, if you don't mind. I appreciate it. Gosh, let's let some Q&A come in. There's a couple have, but Before we start, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's with us this morning. Couldn't think of a better thing to do on a snowy Saturday morning was basically either watch the first presentation about insurance and claims or Scooby-Doo on TV. So I'm glad you joined us. Also, I'd like to thank everybody here. I see a lot of names that I'm familiar with and some new ones. And thank you all for that, what you do for our clubs, our town programs, the leagues, estate for that matter. Just thanks for your dedication and support to helping provide our children with an incredible opportunity to play soccer under a safe, nurturing, growing, and healthy environment. So there are just a few things before I go on. I know some people were on the phone. Sorry if you were listening in and couldn't read the slides. This presentation will be provided on our website later during the week, recorded and up there for you to watch. One of the things, I see Q&A come in, but my friends were evidently thought it would be better to text me some questions, so which is fine. But I mean, it's eye-opening. It really is, the amount of these claims. And a lot of people go, well, that's why we have insurance. And that's correct. It's why we have insurance. But the key is, the why we pay so much is because the claims are so much. So if we can keep our claims down, if we can mitigate, we'll all be in great shape. But one of the things to remember is, small organization can be hit hard with one claim because we have a $25,000 retention. So if there is a claim where it's a goalpost injury or something that's going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, yes, our insurance is there, but the first 25,000 comes right out of the cash of that organization. And that could devastate some organizations' cash flow for sure. So it's just something to be aware of. One other thing on the COIs, when we talked about the certificates of insurance, there was the mention about a use of town fields or municipal fields or school fields. And a lot of people think, well, they didn't ask for a COI. I'm not going to put one in for one. So if an accident happens, well, the field owner has partial responsibility. Their insurance will kick in. That's correct. The but part is, and this is happening right now with one of our member organizations, is that they had use of 6 fields in a certain municipality. There was a turnover in people, claims were made, COIs were not issued. The municipality is on the hook to help pay those claims, which are still in process. And then the following year, they took all 6 fields away from that town club program and really left them with no place to play. So think about your decisions where you think you might be saving something in the short run, but in the long run, it could really hurt your program. So please, we don't have a problem issuing COIs, not at all, because it helps our relationship with field owners for our programs. Now, keep in mind, in order for us to issue a COI, your program, your town league or club must be in good standing with Mass Youth Soccer. That means you need to be submitting your player registration data and adult registration payments, well in advance of the season starting so that we can get those COIs issued. So thank you very much for just those couple of points. And Rob, you said there were some questions coming in.
Yeah, we have had a few questions come in. If you would like to ask questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom browser, and we will get to them as we go along. Just quickly, we will be sharing both videos and slide decks, including the Q&A, onto our website this coming week. There has been a couple of questions come in regarding that. So first question, Mike, is there a minimum age for kids to be insured and registered with Mass Youth Soccer?
There is. We do not have prenatal soccer. Let's make that clear. No, all kidding aside. We do have programs that start, believe it or not, at U4. And so some of our clubs and towns will start U4 type of play, which is 3-year-olds. We have some stipulations. Typically, soccer for years started pre-K or U6. And so if we go a couple of years younger and when we have inquiries, just make sure that if you're offering a program, number one, it's offered by either one of two choices. So the first choice is an outside vendor or provider, soccer tots, soccer shots, little kickers, you name it. There's a bunch of little programs out there that are franchises and or a club may have a program. The key is that they have to be using an age-appropriate curriculum. And number two is the parent must be with the child at all times. So if you're dropping a 3 or a 4-year-old off at a, and then taking off and getting coffee, it does not work. Parent must be there at all times. The second is the organization may have their own internal program that they use for the kids 3, 4 years old, up to 5. And once again, age appropriate curriculum. The people that are teaching it really should be licensed coaches, licensed daycare providers, education, like they need to have a background on how to work with young children. And again, parents must be there 100% of the time.
Thank you, Mike. Next question. Does Mass Youth Soccer's directors and officers insurance extend to the board members of our member organizations? That's a
great question. The quick answer is yes, it does. However, there have been some changes that just took place with insurance. The last 2 years, the insurance market for youth sports has virtually been turned upside down. One example is, I'll get back to the D&O in a second, but it's on the liability. For years, Mass Youth Soccer, we had a base policy, which also covered sexual abuse and molestation. And then we had a $10 million excess policy, which covered SAM, sexual abuse and molestation. Well, with our renewal this year, carriers are getting out of that business. They just don't want the risk. They don't want to touch it. And so other insurance carriers are in it. But here's what's happening is the limits are dropping and the premiums are going up. And then when it comes to excess, they're dropping SAM. So what we had to do with our liability is our basic liability covers sexual abuse and molestation up to $2 million in totality, $1 million per occurrence. Our excess coverages, we couldn't get a $10 million policy. So we had to get a $5 million and then a $5 million on top of that from another carrier. So we've stacked our coverages to remain at the $10 million worth of coverage statewide, but the SAM coverage is lower. Now we do have SAM in our first layer of excess, but not in the second. With the D&O insurance is covered under our management liability policy. Well, it used to be we had a policy that covered Mass Youth Soccer and all member organizations. The carriers said, no, there's a totally different risk. So now we have a separate policy for Mass Youth Soccer's board of directors and employees at Mass Youth, and one for all of our member organizations. So all of our 380 some odd member organizations, towns, clubs, leagues, have management liability, which includes directors and officers insurance.
Thank you, Mike. Yep. Next one. Are the towns responsible for validating adult registrations, including safe sport and choreo approval, or is that supposed to happen at the league level?
In Massachusetts, that is a town or club responsibility, is that everything having to do with compliance with the requirements starts at the lowest level possible, which is within the town or the club. So every town or club, of course, has access into the US Soccer Connect system where they can check on the status of all registered adults within their organization. And an adult should not be able to be, take to the field for practices, games, any activities until they have passed all of their requirements. And that's at the local level. At the league level, the league is basically expecting and holding the town program or the club responsible to meet those obligations. And I know most of the leagues that we have, if there is a town program that is rostering unregistered or improperly registered adults and or players, there's some severe ramifications to that town program. From the league perspective, from the Mass Youth Soccer perspective, there are severe ramifications that if there are adults and players that are being illegally rostered, improperly done, they're breaking state law. And we need to address that as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mike. Next question is regarding fields and additional insured facilities. So if a town or program submits for a number of fields and then needs to add an additional field or location after their initial submission, what is the process to do that? How do they get the additional facility insured?
So COIs can be requested at any time. So if you've got your first wave of COIs for 4 or 5 fields that your organization uses, and then 2 more come online, jump on the website, fill out a COI request. In fact, COI requests need to be done on a field by field situation. We don't issue blanket COIs. So that's the way that can be handled.
Thank you. Do all registered players of a town, program, or club need to be covered under Mass Youth Soccer's insurance policies, or only those that participate in league games?
With Mass Youth Soccer, all of our member organizations are 100% affiliated with Mass Youth. Every single player and adult participant, which is anybody that's required to do an adult registration, must be registered with Mass Youth Soccer. For example, I know we have had some organizations who have basically thought, well, I don't need to register my rec kids. This is just for travel. And then a claim takes place, a 6-year-old breaks a leg. What happens is, well, they're a member organization. They put in a claim and they were never registered. So they don't have any excess medical. And so what will happen is then they'll sue the club to cover any out-of-pocket costs. I mean, years ago when my kids were playing, a broken ankle, an excess medical for a broken ankle was, copay and out-of-pocket, which $350. Now with high copays and high out-of-pockets, broken ankle claim is going to be $1,500. And a parent would put a claim in for that, and the organization didn't register the child. And so they're negligent for not properly registering the children with Mass Youth Soccer, who provides that organization with their insurance coverage. And so the liability coverage for that organization did not pay. And the parents got a claim for the medical expenses and pain and suffering right out of the coffers of that organization. So it's short money to register every single player in your member organization with Mass Youth Soccer.
Thank you. Are coaches covered under the directors and officers policies? And just to expand on that as well, what coverages do we offer for coaches?
Okay, so coaches are directors and officers really covers the elected directors and officers of a member organization. If it's a town program, you've got directors and officers as part of a nonprofit organization. And if it's a for-profit, it's the primary people that are basically designated in that business as being an officer of the corporation and if it's a one-person LLC, then it covers that one person in that LLC, unless they actually do have another director board under that one person. So that's what it covers. It covers the people who are making the decisions for that organization. It covers them, in the event something was said or done where somebody has an issue. Coaches are covered by our general and excess liability insurance coverages. And that is the more expansive coverage that we have. So our coaches are well protected. However, nobody is protected for gross negligence. For example, you're out of practice, you've got a sibling climbing on a goal net and having fun and sitting in it like it's a hammock. And the coach looks over there and laughs and giggles. Oh, well, look at Tommy's little brother. And an accident happens. That coach is liable for gross negligence because they know they should have stopped it. They should have told the child to stop. They should have told the parent to get the child away. So coaches are covered if it's, if the coach was totally unaware this was happening, something was taking place, they did not have any ability to interrupt and get involved, and an accident took place, or typically the coach would be found to be not negligent because they were totally unaware of that situation. Leaving goals in the middle of a field after the end of practice and taking off, and then a bunch of neighborhood kids come in and start playing, that's negligence. Now, is it gross negligence or negligence? That's up for the courts to decide.
Thank you, Mike. We have no further questions at the moment. We'll leave it open for a couple more minutes. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom bar. Our next session kicks off at 10 o'clock with Ted Priestley. So we have fundraising ideas for nonprofits coming up. One that's just come in: if a group of kids and parents get together for a friendly game that is not an official practice or game of the organization, do the policies still apply? Or if there is an accident during that fun end of season get together? So end of season parties and pickup soccer.
Okay, end of season parties, gatherings, galas, award events. Those events are covered by our general liability policies. If somebody were to get hurt, they're not covered. In this, I'm talking stuff off the field. They're not covered by excess medical if they're not a registered participant of Mass Youth Soccer. Now, end of season, you have parents coming out on the field. If those parents are not registered adults with Mass Youth Soccer, that event cannot take place. On the field, it has to be covered participants, registered players, registered coaches, in order for them to participate in soccer activities that would be covered.
Thank you. Under Mass Youth Soccer's policies, is legal defense provided to our members?
So, yes, as a part of our liability coverages, our management liability and our D&O, that if in fact the carriers claim it to be a covered event, that to provide that those individuals protection, then they would then the attorneys for the carrier come on in to protect our interest.
Thank you very much. We did have another question come in, but it looked like it got cut off.
Nope.
Gotcha. And it was in regards to the pickup soccer. So just find the. So in pickup soccer, let's say a town is running a pickup soccer program, or a friendly parent, neighborhood parent decides to take 12 kids down to the soccer field and let them play soccer in the summer. Would that be a covered soccer activity or event under Mass Youth Soccer's policies? If
it wasn't arranged, overseen, and managed by a member organization, and if the participants are not registered participants of Mass Youth Soccer, adults and players, then no, it would not be covered.
Next one, towns need to drive coverage for board members that might not be a coach as well. So we need to register all board members that aren't technically coaching.
Well, so in essence, this gets back to the importance that every member organization needs to make sure that they're abiding by their governing documents, their bylaws and constitution, properly holding elections as stipulated by those documents, thus properly recording who their directors are, of which then that must be properly recorded with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on an annual basis with their state filings. And so if there is ever a claim, and for example, we had one several years ago where somebody made a claim against a director of an organization for libel and slander via email. It got pretty ugly. insurance carrier came in and said, okay, what was this person acting as? Were they acting as a coach, or were they acting as a board member, or just a parent? And they're going to determine that if it was done while they were wearing their director's or officer's hat, and they were a verifiable current director or officer of that organization, the insurance would cover them. Unfortunately, in this situation, it was determined to be the person was doing it as a parent and not as a board member, and thus they were on their own. And essentially, their protection was the homeowner's insurance covered them for that libel and slander.
Thank you. A couple more questions coming in related to our other programs. So we'll start with Top Soccer. Understanding that most Top Soccer volunteer buddies are often already registered as players for their town. Can you speak to the importance of registering buddies that are not players elsewhere in the organization?
Absolutely. Great question. Our Top Soccer program is a vital program to the success of Mass Youth Soccer's being pretty much, accepting and inclusive of players of all abilities. And I'm going to put the plug in real fast. If there's any member organization out there that does not have a Top Soccer program, contact us and we will help get one started. Typically, buddies. If buddies are the volunteers that work with the children that participate and in the programs. And when I say children, some of these the children could be 17, 18, 19 years old. But the buddies need to be registered with Mass Youth Soccer through their local organization. Now, if they're in there as a player, they're 17 or younger, and they're in the system as a player, they're covered. They don't have to register as an adult or a coach as well. But if they're just a buddy, not a player, have them register as a player in that town. That will provide them the coverage. If they're 18 or older, have them register as an adult so that they're covered as well. So we can provide, you say to yourself, what can happen within a Top Soccer program? Well, what could happen is they could step in a gopher hole, and you saw the claim for that. So let's make sure that we get them properly registered and affiliated.
Thank you. Next one, what coverage do we provide for referees, and can you differentiate between referees for town or club games and those in town or recreational programs, please?
All right. And I know, Rob, we're coming up on our cutoff time, so I can get off and get the next one queued off. So I will take this as the last question. Anything else that comes in, we'll try and get to. Great question. So referees, let's talk about certified referees, or what people would call them as patch referees. I am one myself. So as a member of the USSF, certified referee, I have liability coverages that are provided to me through the Federation. And that if anything were to ever happen where I get sued, or I do something crazy and I get, somebody sues me, I've got the Federation coverage only when I am covering certified or affiliated matches, which is virtually all league play that we have with the travel leagues in the state. Now let's take a look at in-town. In-town play kind of goes on two sides of the coin. If there's a patched referee, a certified referee, refereeing in-town play, they're covered by the Federation's policy. We do have some in-town programs that are using developmental referees that are part of the Genesis referee program. And what they're doing is they're using this as the learning opportunity for in-town play. As long as those individuals are registered with Mass Youth Soccer, they are covered for that officiating work that they're doing in town if they don't have a patch. So if they're already a player and they're also refereeing, they're covered because they're registered as a player with us. And if something were to happen while refereeing, they're covered. If they're not playing and they're 17 or younger, just like with Tops, let's get them registered as a player. And then anybody 18 or over, register as an adult. So we do have some adults that are not patched referees, not certified, doing in-town recreational developmental play, as long as they register an adult, they would be covered.
Super. Thank you very much. So we have reached our hard stop time of 9:50. Thank you very much for everybody for attending. As mentioned, we will post the video recording and slide decks onto our website. We kick off our next session at 10 o'clock with Ted Priestley from Fundraise for You, who'll be discussing fundraising ideas for nonprofits. So thank you very much, Mike. Very informative. We look forward to seeing you all in soccer fields in the near future.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.